Yeah, I guess I should do a little bit of an introduction about myself. And I was trying to remember when I got kind of pulled into the Amida orbit, and I want to say it was around, oh, um, or maybe 2000-ish, 2001. I can't quite exactly remember. So yeah, time flies. Um, and At that time, I think I was first living in New Orleans, um, in Louisiana, and then later in Tallahassee, where I was running a temple, and I had the good fortune to have visits from at that time Prasada, and I can't even remember if Dharma Vidya came to visit there or it was another occasion. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and got things came together. Moved to Hawaii on an Amida project, which was, as all Amida projects are, very exciting. And I'm here now. Never really thought about coming to Hawaii, and now I'm here. And over the last oh 11 years now, I've been working with a nonprofit here, or an NGO here in Hawaii. I've been the executive director since 2011. Our nonprofit works primarily with families. We run an emergency shelter. We provide in-home visitation. We do different kinds of assistance. And it's something I'm pretty involved in pretty deeply. It's been very formative on the way I understand the world, the way I understand the Dharma. And I think it seems, in retrospect, the way I came in contact with the Amida Shu organization was through the book, The New Buddhism. So it seems very natural that now I would be, running this organization that's doing good work, doing very concrete work in the world. So just to give you a little bit of perspective, here where we live in Hawaii, this, on the issue of like homelessness, families who are, don't have shelter or don't have a home to live in. Of all the individuals last year that were homeless, 1/3 of them were children. And of those, half of those were under the age of 5. And that's important because those 0 to 5, that kind of 1 to 5, birth to 5 is really developmentally important. And I work a lot with interfaith groups, with a lot of churches and so forth, to try and get our faith community to really get serious about addressing homelessness and addressing family homelessness in particular, because it's really, really, really hard to find a church person, a person who goes to church, to say that they believe that children should be homeless. And yet, they're homeless children. And it's my personal belief that the reason that there are homeless children is because at some level we're okay with that, right? It's not that we don't have the resources to house children and families, especially here. I mean, it's totally doable. But it's because in our mind, that's acceptable. And so a lot of the work I do in the interfaith community has to do with trying to figure out how do we begin to start to change the mind so that when churches and people of faith see that there is children who are experiencing homelessness, and the thing I like about homelessness is it's simple. The way to end homelessness is you house people. Totally simple. That's it. They might need some other supports, but the main way you end homelessness is you house people. So to change the mind of churches and religious folks so that when they are aware of or see children who are experiencing homelessness, in their mind, the first thing that arises is that's unacceptable, or that I have to do something about that, or we should do something about that and end this child's homelessness or end homelessness in our community. And so it's frustrating work, just really honest. It's really frustrating work because most churches are really invested in maintaining the status quo. I mean, that's the reality. There's a lot of inertia there. More established churches have big buildings that need to be paid. It's very, very frustrating work. And so I personally find a lot of inspiration from, of course, the vision of the Pure Land. But at this time of year, during the time around Bodhi Day, particularly the story of Sujata. Okay? And Dharma Vidya kind of, I don't know if I've ever heard him tell the story the way I like to tell it, but he said something, at some point in the past that like triggered me, and I like, okay, I can put this together for, so it works. It becomes, I can, right. So that's how the Dharma story, how you take the Dharma, you hear it, you think about it, and then you start to integrate it into your life, right? And then you share it, and each of us has a unique perspective on the Dharma, the way those stories, the way those teachings filter through us and then get reflected back in the world. That's why we need, we don't need just one Dharma teacher. We need, hundreds, thousands, infinite numbers of Dharma teachers, because we each reflect the Dharma in unique ways. And so for me, the story of Sujata has a lot to offer us. And so I'm going to unpack that a little bit as my kind of Bodhi Day talk, my Bodhi Day gift for y'all. So in case you don't know, in case somehow you managed to be a Buddhist this long and missed this story, I will set it up for you. So basically, very close to the time that the Buddha-to-be became the Buddha, he had pretty much, he was in a bad way. Let's just say he was in a really bad way. He ditched his friends, his last friend, right? He'd already left his family, he'd done all that. He'd gone to different Dharma schools and abandoned them all because they weren't going to lead him to the true way. And he had these like handful of friends that they're like, okay, we're going to do it together. Fella had a falling out with them. And he's like, I'm the only one that could do this. And he does these intense austerities and he basically breaks his body. He fasts, he does these horrible austerities, and y'all have all seen the pictures of the Buddha where he's so emaciated, his skin is black, black from, and I take that to mean, from because it's diseased and from the exposure and so forth, and you can see his spine through his stomach and his ribs are all sticking out, and he's just totally a wreck. And he wanders off to like go to the edge of a stream to, who knows, get a drink of water, wash his face, whatever, and he falls over. And right, he has this moment of, oh my, I've fallen and I can't get up, right? He's there and he's basically gonna die. That's where he's at. He's on the edge of death in this ditch, right? He's fallen, he's on a ditch. Now, to you and I, if we think about it today, and we encountered somebody who's, weather worn and dirty and diseased, and they're passed out beside a ditch, what would we do? Most of us would avoid that person. Honestly, we wouldn't want to do anything. Maybe we would call somebody, like call whoever, the police, social service, like, hey, there's this homeless guy out there. You need to take care of this, right? But most of us wouldn't do anything or try to avoid it. But along comes this young woman, and there are different versions of the story, but the essence of it is she's taking an offering out for the family gods. And she encounters this this wreck of a human being who's lying there in the ditch, and her heart cracks, her heart opens. And instead of taking these offerings to the family gods, she goes down. Now imagine that if you have a daughter, right? Your young daughter is now going to go help this homeless person, right? Right? This is the stuff that shows up on the news, like don't do it, stranger danger, right? And so she goes and she gives the offering to the Buddha. So to the Buddha to be, to this, as far as she knows, just this homeless, sick person there. And so first of all, I think it is kind of significant for me that she takes an offering which is meant to be for a kind of a not, for beings who do not exist in this realm, and gives it to an actual real human being who is suffering, to try and help them. Right? So there's no question. She doesn't overthink it like you and I would. Oh my goodness, what is this person? Maybe they have scabies. Maybe they, blah, blah, blah. No, she just like gives him the food and whatever else is there. And then here the story goes in a couple different directions. So if you're, you practice in the Vajrayana tradition, the Tibetan and Himalayan traditions, oh, this was a goddess. It was Tara. She shows up and she sweeps the Buddha to be into one of the heavens and gives him all the tantric teachings and finishes up his training so that he can become enlightened. End of story. Or into that part of the story. In another version of the story, the food, this one offering of food, miraculously heals the Buddha. He gets all his, muscle and fat and everything. His body's fully healed. He gets his, celestial, he gets his, his aura back, and he's whole again, one bit of food. And then he makes some great prediction about, throws the bowl in a river and it goes upstream, and he makes some miraculous prediction, yada, yada, yada. Right? So that's two of them. And there's a third one. But before I get onto the third one, those two kind of stories, those two ways of telling the stories really reflect a lot of our religious approaches to dealing with real world concrete suffering. So the first one is the version of either we're just going to pray for them and it's going to be okay. The God, whoever is going to take care of it, right? That's what happened. Or the second kind of version on that one is if they just convert to our religion, they'll be okay, right? I mean, basically, the Buddha's like, oh, he comes on into the Church of Tara, gets the true teachings, and his life's fixed. I mean, really, that's what happens. And then, so that's, and that's pretty normal. You see that a lot. I mean, I see that a lot in the churches we work with, is a lot of effort. Okay, we're going to pray for the poor, but we're not going to do anything. Or if they just come to church with us, they'll get their life in order and things will be fine. So then in the second scenario, where the one bowl of food or whatever makes them all right, that's pretty normal too. So churches love to go out and do these very heroic one-off acts. And that's great. I mean, giving food to people who are hungry is great. But it's a one-off thing. Your one offering might make you feel good, but it doesn't fundamentally change the situation of the person who is suffering. Right? People don't just one day spontaneously become homeless or become, impoverished. It's a long process, and it's going to be a long process to get out. So your one offering, totally nice and generous, and makes you feel good, doesn't change the situation. But that's how most churches kind of approach it. Oh, we're going to go do a feeding on the third Sunday of the third month of whatever. great. Appreciate you guys. But recognize it for what it is. It's a short term, so it's a short-term offering that's going to have a little bit of impact, but it's not going to address the problem. So then we get to the third scenario, and this is a little bit of Paul kind of extrapolating what might have really happened, which is, or Ananda, extrapolating what might have really happened is that probably this young woman gave the offering there and went back home and probably told her family what she'd done. And then they come and they actually started bringing offerings, bringing more food, bringing different ointments and medicine to help the Buddha's body heal. They probably had to make him some clean clothes to wear. And they probably did this over weeks and months until finally the Buddha was restored to health and had the strength to go forward. And more importantly than that, the gift that Sujata really gives the Buddha is that during this entire time, the Buddha to be is watching her and her family. Because if you think about it, up until this point in the Buddha to be's life, his approach was a prajna only approach. It was a wisdom only approach. I am just going to push myself and get some kind of enlightenment, some kind of final realization. And over the course of the months or whatever time it is that the Buddha to be is being nurtured, he's like watching Sujata and the family, taking care of him and nurturing him. And my belief is that's when he starts to truly understand the important role of compassion, right? That's the teaching. Sujata is truly the Buddha to be's final teacher, because she shows how ordinary people acting in compassionate ways can have a huge impact on the world, on people's lives. I mean, her act enabled the Buddha to get the strength back, the Buddha to be to get the strength back and continue and become the Buddha, which was a world transforming event. Without Sujata, this human being would have died. And so my feeling is that when the Buddha be finally moves on and sits down under the Bodhi tree, he sits down with an understanding or an intuition that it's not just the wisdom, but he's also has to reflect on the kindness he has received. And it's those two, the combination of wisdom and compassion, that allow him to push to do whatever, cross that final whatever barrier it is and awaken. Right? Because, I mean, there are tons of ascetics at the time of the Buddha, tons of people doing meditation, getting insights, probably getting some kind of yogic knowledge. But we don't know who they are for the most part. But something was different about the Buddha's awakening, the Buddha's understanding, the Buddha's presentation. And personally, for me, it's that combination of wisdom and compassion. No wisdom without compassion, but you need your compassion tempered by wisdom, right? So if you really want to end homelessness, you have to have the wisdom to understand that it's skillful action over time. If you want to transform the world, if you want to realize the Pure Land, yes, it may exist in some magical celestial realm far to the west, whatever. But the Pure Land potentially has the potential to exist here among us, right? Not in some magical woo-woo way, but in the precious moments that we find every day, in the acts of kindness, the acts of love, that momentary acts of insight, that's where we find the Pure Land. And we work towards growing those. We work towards growing those by making sure, in my world, in Ananda's world, we work to growing the Pure Land by alleviating suffering, by minimizing suffering. Right? I mean, that's what, in my opinion, that's what the Buddha offers us. He offers us an opportunity to transform not only our lives, but the world and the people around us through skillful action, wisdom, and compassion. So, happy Bodhi Day. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Okay, so we have two options at this point. We can either stay here and ask you questions and so on, or we can go into breakout groups for a short time and then come back, and there'll be a shorter period for responding to you. I don't know how we make this decision, but you have a preference how you'd like to handle it, Ananda?
I'm okay with, we can just see how the big group does. And if it gets out of hand because people are all fired up, then we can send them off to their corners to figure it out.
Okay, so open forum.
Yeah, can I just want to say something. Dharma Vidya emailed us and asked us to send photos of our altars. And so I was thinking about my altar and realizing that, it's not very grand, but that Shantikara, when I first started getting engaged with Buddhism, gave me my Buddha, and that he got at a garage sale for $5. And, that's right in what you're talking about is, the right help at the right time. And it, made a huge difference in my life. So I just want to say thank you. Namo.
I thank you for your talk. I hope you can hear me okay. My internet connection is a bit iffy. I thought your insights about what happened were absolutely amazing and probably spot on. But what I also wanted to say is that in Cornwall, there's a lot of homelessness. And it is something that particularly the Quakers have been working on. And they've been quite successful with working with churches together, but it has taken a while to get going. But it is, it is ongoing. We've actually got shelters. We had a night shelter for one winter, so everybody was able to, mostly be under shelter. But really, it's, I just wanted to say the Quakers were the leading force here, and I don't know whether you have any Quakers in Hawaii, but I would imagine they'd be right on it if they were, because they're very, very eager down here to do it. It's one of their principles, So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, not many Quakers here.
No, I wondered.
Probably not very many Sikhs either. The Sikhs are very good at feeding homeless people.
Yeah. But again, that's the Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid, but in their case, it's regular. They can go every day.
Right.
It is long term.
No, I can't do that.
I just wanted to say hi. Thank you very much, Ananda.
George here, resonated a lot. I remember in London, there's a place called St. Botolph's, which is a homeless shelter under a church, which did great work, but it opened at 8 o'clock and closed at 10 o'clock. So everybody could go there and have a great sense of having contributed to a massive social problem. But the tough time was chucking everybody back out onto the streets at 10 o'clock. And so it was admirable, but obviously token. And also, thank you very much for your rendition of Sujata. Not important, but the Zen and Now project, which I've been working on with friends, we tried to tell Sujata's story in 3 songs. And we happened to go for the naturalistic, sort of a humanly believable thing with a certain amount of poetic license. So I hope it strikes the right note, because you know, I have had teenage daughters, now have teenage granddaughters, and you know, at their best, the simple compassion is fantastic. And I agree entirely that he went from this emaciated wreck to one simple act of kindness by a young girl, totally transformative. So it's the great story. Thank you.
There's an interesting question here, because I used to work in social services, social work department in the north of England, and we had pretty good approach to homelessness. There were very few homeless people because we housed them, and what am I trying to get at? You know, an element of what you said was that what affected the Buddha was the generosity of these people, that he was watching them and he saw their generous spirit. And you wouldn't get that if you were being rehoused by a government scheme, in the sense that there wouldn't be kind of an individual that you would identify with who was being generous. I don't think people feel as inspired by simply getting a service that's provided by the anonymous bureaucracy, which is what we were. On the other hand, the anonymous bureaucracy might be actually more effective in stamping out the social problem. So there's a sort of maybe a dilemma or quid pro quo or trade-off or something here about what is best.
David, thanks for that observation. And Ananda, I'm sorry, I only came in at the tail end of your talk because it's 6 in the morning here. But I just wanted to make an observation about what you said, David, which is that the anonymous bureaucracy is actually the administrator of the social system. And the anonymous bureaucracy is the arm of the particular type of social organization which creates the poverty in the first place. It's the system itself which allows the situation to develop. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure why we aren't clearer about the role that government must play in providing housing for people who don't have the money to provide it for themselves.
Well, presumably they're not providing it in Hawaii.
I don't know. I don't know about Hawaii, but they're certainly not providing it in Australia. They're not providing it in England. They're attempting to provide it in Scotland. But that's a different story. I'm just not sure why we as concerned Buddhists aren't talking more about holding governments to account.
Right, right. So you did miss the beginning of my thing, which was kind of started a little bit about how the, fundamentally, addressing in this, I started focused on family homelessness and child homelessness, but fundamentally with churches, it's about changing mind. And Christianity uses a term called, I think it's metanoia, so the big change. And we, that so that it is unacceptable for there to be homelessness. And that change, and I'm not saying this is magic and there isn't a lot of political work that needs to be done and grassroots work that needs to be done and, social change that needs to happen. But, as from my perspective is, changing the mind so that in this particular case, children it's unacceptable for children to experience homelessness. And yes, how that happens, whether it's government that provides subsidized housing or what, like, what is it in, I think in Paris, something like 30% of all rental apartments in Paris are subsidized by the Parisian government. That's a pretty ambitious program and they have I don't really want to get into the politics of it, but there's a lot of solutions, a lot of possibilities out there. But the thing that I feel like we as religious people, whatever church, whatever group you're involved in, need to be realistic about the problems and really try and look at real solutions and recognize that these solutions are going to take a lot of work and long term. And the approaches are going to be different. There's never going to be one approach. But it starts from compassion and a willingness to keep showing up day after day, like Sujata and her, what I imagine would be, her family or whatever.
What I see, Ananda, since we're on the same island and I've got to watch your agency take off and do all the good work, is you're like the perfect bridge between a government, and the funders and the grantors and the people that are gonna, throw some resources needed towards a problem. And you're the Sujata in between that takes it. It's not like her family's giving her food and she brings it to the Buddha. It's like the funders and the grantors and the politicians give Ananda because of your good faith. Honestly, one of the things that people know about you is the kind of utter sincerity of what you do. So you're trustworthy. And then your organization has built a reputation that it will get it to the people, to the Buddha, to the Buddhas to be, to the families, to the homeless kids. So I think your excellence that I've seen is you're unique in that there's a lot of people that lead organizations that aren't that middle person really, and you really can take the resources, convert it to your, and grab the staff that are from the community and then get it to the people. And you do that pretty gracefully. And I know how hard it is. So thank you for doing that for years.
Well, it seems like we shouldn't expect churches to solve problems that are based on people earning $7, $10 an hour. The income inequality is so great and just getting worse all the time because rents are going up while wages and people are losing their jobs. So it's, they're really kind of monumental problems that are getting out of control. And now with this COVID, if they're going to allow these in this country anyway, for rent moratoriums to expire, there are going to be many more homeless people than there are now, just because of this dysfunction. In St. Louis, the churches are doing a lot, but it doesn't seem like, some of these problems are just so systemic that they need bigger solutions, and they need the government to step in until some of the other things can change. And it's almost like they're saying, oh, well, the churches will take care of it. And here it's kind of a combination. I think the city's making some efforts, but it's a big problem. It's not just churches that are going to be the solution.
Yes. So yes, I agree. But I am a fundamentally religious person, and I perhaps foolishly believe that, churches should take the moral high ground and should lead on issues like this. We've seen this is my bias, but in the West and the United States, we've seen some pretty horrible theology affect change in the world. And so I focus on churches because, first of all, it's Bodhi Day. This is a religious, right? This is a religious gathering. That's what we are together. We're gathered together as religious people, and we need to. I feel like we have a role in transforming the world. But yes, it is a systemic issue, and as I said earlier, by and large, churches are invested in maintaining the status quo. I see it here. We're getting ready. Again, I'm trying to really avoid the politics of it, but we're getting ready to have our in Hawaii, in the state of Hawaii, we're getting ready to have our legislative session. And as far as I forget what the budget is for the state of Hawaii, but the budget for homeless programs specifically is $11 million total. The county where I live on, the island I live on, they invest zero money in homelessness themselves. So it comes from the state or federal money that we manage to bring or private donors. So they're talking about cutting that very tiny amount of money by a significant portion. If, in my belief, if churches were passionate about preventing homelessness and preventing child homelessness, they could organize to influence the priorities of our state government. So that's why I kind of work with churches as an influencing agent. And that's my particular politics, my theology, my belief that the Pure Land is that we're all collectively working towards the Pure Land, or towards the beloved community, or towards heaven on earth, in which we all work to minimize unnecessary suffering, unnecessary hardship. That is a particular theological bias, or philosophical bias, moral bias. I get that, but that's what I believe. That's why I'm a Pure Land Buddhist. We're trying to build the Pure Land together. So,
well, I think
yeah.
living on an island it has a different, hopefully has a little bit different outlook, and that the community is finite, geographically finite, and that it's like the whole canoe metaphor. It's like if you don't connect, then the canoe's not going to get anywhere. And so I think the Hawaii Island has that potential. Unfortunately, I feel like it's kind of been overrun by mainland kind of attitudes. And so I agree that, like our local Waimea church provides a community dinner every Thursday that's sponsored by various people and organizations. And that's great. But I feel that, all the efforts that we make individually and as organizations is not enough. We need to have a change in the upper echelons of things, and how to make that happen, I don't know. It's
Thank you, Jan.
pondering.
Yeah. So big issues, and I don't know if this isn't really the forum to try and solve it, because we all bring our own political agendas here and solutions, which is great. If we're all have different political agendas, but we all agree that child homelessness is unacceptable, then we'll have, I don't know how many people are on the screen, but we'll have that many different solutions that we could try out and hopefully come to a good end, right? A good end of ending child homelessness. That would be awesome.